Hello, beautiful soul. My name is Joanna. If this is your new time here, thank you so much for being here. My hope and my intention is to share with you information from the field that is going to help and assist you in the process of waking up. So essentially, to assist you in remembering who you really are, which is a powerful being. So if you like this, I would love for you to share this with someone. If you feel they could benefit from it, please subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the channel be seen by more people. And I believe that the more people embody their true power, it'll essentially change our world. Just little something from me. For those of you who are returning, thank you so much for being here. Without you, I wouldn't do this. When I do this, I feel at home, although I resist many times feeling of being at home. And I'll tell you why. The resistance is so big sometimes is that if I allow myself to be truly with the field, my ego is terrified of being annihilated, destroyed, basically. So merging fully with the field is essentially destroying the ego. Destroying is the wrong word, but let's just use that analogy. And right now, we are all going through a process where every single human being is moving closer and closer to being in a flow with source. That's how it wants to come through me. So we are all source anyway. We are all part of source. There is source is within us, whether you can use the word God if you like. But essentially what I'm saying is we are moving closer and closer, energetically speaking, to the frequency of source. And we live on a planet that's very dense. So even though source is within us, our density almost prevents us from embodying this higher frequency. So we are in the process. And what is waking up, really? Waking up or ascension is really about embodying more of your true essence, more of source. And as we know, source is very powerful. And so the more we embody our source, the more powerful we become. Essentially, that's what it is. And when the ego has been taught or rooted in disempowerment, to move into this empowered state, it's like a completely different world. So what I'm saying here is that as we're going through the process of ascension, we're also going through a process of ego death, which is how we identify ourselves. Ego is not a bad thing. It's essentially your soul's vehicle to experience life from the perspective of 3D density. Ego is beautiful. It's wonderful. The only trouble becomes when the limited ego tries to control us. And because ego is based on limitations, when we are controlled by our ego, we are essentially being controlled by our limitations. But there is so much more to us than our limitations, number one. And number two, a lot of the limitations that we believe we have, they're not even true. They're not even true. So this is a really good time for everyone, at least for you if you're listening, to look at your own limited programming. And this is what I talk about. This is essentially what the field wants me to do. It's to help each and every individual understand themselves from a much higher perspective. Why? Because the more you can see yourself truly, the more you are in embodiment of your own power. And I have never, ever met a person, client or otherwise, that said, hey, Joanna, can you help me feel more disempowered? It's not how it works. Every single human being wants to feel empowered. We already know what it's like to feel disempowered. So we are now in the process of letting go of our own disempowerment, how we disempower ourselves. Give them an example. One of the ways I personally disempower myself. Not so much more now, but I used to be really good at it, was to constantly tell myself, consciously or otherwise, that I'm not good enough. And that belief system essentially created an internal prison. And I learned to live in that prison, and it just became my world. But in order for me to do what I do, I cannot be that limitation, because what I'm here to do requires me to be very open to the field. And if I have fears that I am not good enough to directly have a direct relationship with the field, I'm not going to allow myself to do that, which means I don't benefit and you don't benefit. So I'm not of any help to you. So this has been my belief system for a very long time, as long as I remember. But I am now in a realization that that is a belief. It's not something that's me. It is a part of me, but it's ultimately not me. And just having that realization that it's not me empowers me and disempowers more of that belief. In other words, I no longer see myself as someone who is not good enough. I see myself as someone who sometimes holds on to the idea that she's not good enough. But that idea is ultimately not who she is. It's an idea. However, if I identify with that idea, that's what I will be. So the more we practice seeing the underlying limited beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we hold about ourselves, and then ask the question, well, is it really true? Then just pausing and seeing your limited conditioning, you seeing your conditioning basically says, because you're seeing it, you cannot be it. If I am seeing this pen, then I'm not the pen. It's me looking at the pen. So when you start seeing your limited beliefs, you are looking from the perspective of consciousness. In other words, you for that moment realize that your limitation is not who you are, but it is your identity because you believed that's what it is. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Here's why it's so important to know. Once you are conscious of your limiting conditioning, limiting programming, you can change it, because you can never change something that you don't know exists. And if you are a regular human being like I am, 95% of everything that we do comes from our unconscious programming. So we are basically programmed to run on the unconscious most of the time. But if this unconscious programming is fear-based, then most of our unconscious choices and decisions will be coming from the space of fear. And fear always limits us. Fear is not a bad thing. It prevents us from doing dumb shit. Fear of itself is not a bad thing. It's how much fear do we let control our lives. So when we become aware of these unconscious limiting programmings, which are always based in fear, we begin to realize that we are not the fear itself. We are not the fear itself. And there's something profound that happens when you realize that you are not the fear itself. There's you and there's your fear. And just that realization makes a massive, massive difference. So today, we're going to talk about November energies and some of the things we might be expecting in the month of December. It's going to go beyond November. It's going to go beyond November, but I asked for themes for the month of November. So last time I talked about the soul contracts. We're writing the soul contracts. It's the last video if you want to watch it. And it is actually a really good time to rewriting our soul contracts, because a lot of the limiting beliefs are things we have inherited from parents, from society. And releasing these old contracts is like releasing limited programming. So I created a form. There's a link down below so for you to have a generic contract of your soul, to rewrite your soul's contract. So if you're interested in rewriting your own contracts, there's a link down below. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I would highly encourage you to do this. Why? Because right now at this time, anything that we put forth, any new seeds that we plant, any new ideas that we come up with, these have a much greater chance of actually sticking. So let's say you become aware of your unconscious beliefs and you realize that that belief is running the show. Okay. And then you realize that how that belief expresses itself in every day of your life. And once you have that belief and the corresponding ways that you unconsciously act or react, you can then become more conscious of how you react, how you experience, and how you respond. Okay. So, in other words, knowing your fear and where it comes from gives you greater opportunity to transform it and transmute it. And in this energy right now, because the energy is very potent, it's like planting new seeds. So this is an extremely good time for letting go of the old and bringing forth the new. Okay. So theme number 1, let go of any assumptions of how things will unfold. Realizations of your dreams may come in different packages. Focus on the end result as a feeling in your body rather than a specific outcome. Surprises are in store for many of you. So this is basically telling me that there is a lot of surprises waiting for us, but we are afraid. We are afraid what's going to happen, and that's because the ego mind goes to survival in order to try to control things, because controlling things makes the ego feel safer. Okay. On the other hand, when we are just open and ready to experience whatever wants to come to us, and we experience based on our vibration, then we are opening up ourselves to something far more than we have previously thought of. Okay? So if you want something, as an example, and you have a fixed idea of what that something is, rather than focusing on that something, realize the feeling that you get from having that something. In other words, connect with the feeling of the emotion of your end goal. Okay? And rather than focusing on the end goal and what it's supposed to look like, focus on the frequency that is connected to your end goal. Why? Because you may have an idea of what your end goal looks like, but you may not have thought of ways other than what you imagined, and therefore the universe will likely bring you something that allows you to have that vibration, to feel that way, but it's going to come in a different package. In other words, expect yourself to be surprised. Okay? And listen, I'm a human being. I know what it's like when you're in a situation and it feels like you don't know what to expect. Because if you don't know what to expect, you can't control it. So the ego is scared because the ego is afraid of what it doesn't know. Because if it doesn't know something, it can't control it. The idea isn't to getting rid of fear, getting rid of ego. The idea here is to recognize that as long as we think thoughts and belief based on our fears, we're going to be limiting our experiences. And the universe wants us to have more experiences, not less experiences, but more empowering experiences. So I don't know why I'm saying this. I feel it must be important. So the message is, let go of assumptions of how you think things are going to turn out for you, and instead realize that there is so much more that you can't even think of yet that is equally to what you want, or often even better. Okay? So relax your ideas about the outcomes or assumptions of what something is supposed to look like or be like. That's number one. Number two, there is a fear of letting go of the old. And we're seeing this in all the systems that are collapsing. And the fear is, if I let go of this, what will happen to me? So November, well, the entire 2025, I feel, is a year of letting go. It's certainly the case for me. It is a pivotal year, which is what I was told in 2024, and which means it's an important year. And in important years like that, a lot of turmoil happens. A lot of things take place, chaotic things often. And that's because during these times, something is being birthed. So we are in a process of something new being birthed. And if you've ever seen a birth or a video of birth, messy. It's messy. So fears coming up to the surface. What's going to happen to me? You might be, someone out there might be fearing losing their job. Okay. Someone else might be fearing losing their apartment. And naturally fears will come up because that's very normal, right? For those of you who this makes sense, if you are fearful of letting something go because you're afraid you're not going to have a replacement or it just won't happen, you're being asked to let that fear go because that is based on lack consciousness. The universe will always give us what we need. It's different from what the ego wants. That's very different. The universe will always give us what we need. And sometimes what we need is something that ego doesn't want because it's uncomfortable. But we never grow through comfort. Generally, growth happens, I would say, almost always with discomfort because we're stretching. So we're in a process of stretching. Okay? The more we open up, the more fear will arise to the surface. Because to be more open means to be in a higher vibration. Because to be more open is to be in the heart, and to be in the heart, we have to feel safe. So the more in the heart we are, the more we are in a coherence, higher frequency, the more our denser fears will come up to the surface. And this is an opportunity for us to move some of that density through the body. You're asking the question, what does that mean? Thank you. I asked the same thing. This is an amazing time for transmuting our fears, not getting rid of, because you will never get rid of something that's a part of you. This is not about getting rid of fear. This is about transmuting your fear and your relationship with it so that your fear doesn't control you. Your fear is important. It's your body. You should have it. It has its purpose. But if it controls you, then it's not what we want. What's the best way to transmute fear frequency? Thank you for asking. I asked the same thing. Let it move through your body. And you're like, oh my God, Joanna, I don't want to feel that. I know, right? I feel you. But if you're feeling it anyway, then resisting feeling it is not going to help you. It's just going to keep it stuck. And the fear energy wants to move through us, and it's not comfortable. Now, in order for you to let your fear move through you, you have to feel safe. Because if you don't feel safe to feel whatever you're feeling, you're just not going to do it. That's just the way it is. So, and that's a really important point for me to make. In order to move fear through your body, you have to be in an environment where you feel safe. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. Okay. Number 3, exposing fear-based conditioning. This is what's coming up for us right now. It has been coming up for a while, but it's heightened. Okay. Why are these fear-based conditioning being exposed? Because ultimately, fear keeps us down. Fear limits our potential. Okay. Again, fear in and of itself is not a bad thing. Too much fear limits our potential. Why? Because fear is always about survival. So this is how it is. It's important that we have survival fears, fear of falling, fear of loud noises. Those are all important fears. But fears such as, I will never have love. I will never have enough money. I will never be able to do this. I am not good enough. Nobody's going to love me. I'm not going to get a better paid job. There's millions of these. You guys know. When we identify with that, it keeps us stuck. So as we are opening up to a higher consciousness, we are beginning to realize that we are not our programming. There is us, consciousness, and then we have our programming. The moment we become consciously aware of our programming, we can then begin to change it, because you cannot change something that you have no awareness of. And the more we identify with our programming, especially the limited programming, the more limited we become in terms of our own creation and our own potential. And your soul wants to live up to its potential. And the only thing that's going to prevent it from doing that, is your own limitation, your own often unconscious limitation. So unconscious limited programming are coming up to the surface. I've had quite a few of these in the last few weeks, like 2 or 3, and they felt very existential. I talked about it in the other video, and they came up for me and made so much sense. And before, I wasn't even aware of it. So you might have things like that old limited programming conditioning come up to the surface. And they're asking me to say is that those are often tied to the old contracts. Okay, so if you have a limited belief system that comes up to the surface and you begin to realize, oh my God, I didn't realize this is what I believed. You can use that belief and then rewrite your soul contract. Okay. And because it's coming up to the surface, because it's observable, it gives you the ability to make a different choice, to do something about it, which is an empowered state. Okay. Knowing your fear tends to relax you more. And I actually thought, okay, let me just think about that. So knowing my fear tends to relax me more. And I said, why? And what came up was, because when you see something, you're often less afraid of it. And I thought that makes sense, because oftentimes we are afraid of what we don't know or what we don't understand. The moment we know something and the more we have at least some level of understanding of it, then the less afraid we are of it, right? Now, understanding your fear only purely from the intellectual perspective is not enough to transmute it completely, because you have to move it through the body. But understanding something certainly helps one to go, I didn't realize I did that. And because you have a conscious realization of doing something now that you were not conscious of it before, you have now choice. You have a choice to do it differently or to make a different choice. Okay. What else do we have? This feels a little bit specific for some of you out there. So basically, we are being asked to trust the universe. I talked about trust fatigue in the Demystifying Divinity podcast on Spotify. There's a link down there. And when we are being asked to trust, but nothing is happening, then our nervous system begins to kind of, it gets triggered because it's like, okay, I'm doing all this trusting and nothing is happening. Am I actually safe? Okay. But yes, we are all being asked to trust the process. Now, trusting the process doesn't mean that we sit idle. We still do that. We still do things. We still think. We still manage our world. But we allow things to come for us and to us rather than us trying to force something. Okay? And as you probably already know, based on the law of attraction, we are all magnetic. We magnetize things to ourselves based on our vibration. So the more we are at peace with ourselves, the more we are quiet inside, the more we are able to attract corresponding vibrationally things and situations. It's just a basic law of attraction, right? So this is asking us to take a leap of faith. And if this resonates with you, you are likely being to at least consider some of the choices that might be coming up for you. Maybe you are afraid of losing your job and you're terrified. If you lose your job, you don't know what's going to happen to you. What if this losing your job was an opportunity for you to actually do what you are here to do at this time? In other words, you losing your job is very likely a gift from the universe that says, okay, we're going to help you move away from that so that you can finally go here. But because you can't see what that is yet, your ego is afraid, and it's perfectly okay. The point isn't to be fearless. The point is to have fear, healthy amounts of fear, but also don't let fear rule your life. Don't let fear rule your life. So there is likely choices or decisions coming up for some of you around which direction do I take now? Okay. And this could be jobs, relationships. You're coming up to we are coming up to a point where the proverbial fork in the road happens. Which way do we go? Because we can't go the way we were used to going. We now have to make choices or decisions. So that's the first one. Community. It is essential that we begin to think of ourselves not as isolated islands, but as being part of a larger community. We are all part of galactic community. We're not doing this alone, although it seems like it. Okay. Also, the message here is you are here to either build and or help support some sort of community. So if you have been thinking of wanting to create your own little community in whatever way, then you are being asked, you are being urged to honor that. It doesn't have to be something that is your job. It could be something that you do on the side, but you connecting with other like-minded people is really important for you to do right now. Why? Because you have a message to spread. I don't know what message, but you have a message to spread. And it's important for you to put yourself out there. So I don't know who this is for, but it's fairly specific. Being a mentor. Okay, so here's the message. How can you help someone when they're struggling? How can you help someone when they're struggling? I don't know why this question is being asked, but it's supposed to make sense to some of you. That's number one. Number two, the question, how can I be of help? It's really important that we start asking the question, how can we be of help? How can we be of help? How can we help? And I'm supposed to stop at that. It's important that this phrase was mentioned. How can I help? So my question to you is, how can I help? Let me know how I can help you. Understand yourself better. Based on what you know, that you're receiving from me? How can I help you? And put your comments down so I can read them and respond, okay? For others of you, is you being some sort of like a helping organizer. You help organize people, or you are organizing. There's something about organizing here. Now this message says being the mentors. You're here to help others, yes, but more importantly, you are here to truly and uniquely express yourself. So how you help others will be very unique to you, because you are here born with specific set of skills. So what I'm sensing here is the message is, try not to look at others and emulating them in what they do, because you're not here to do what they do. It's funny because I feel like that's the message for me. You're not here to do what other people are doing. You are here to do things differently. And that may scare you because it's different. People are not used to that difference. And sometimes different can be met with rejection. People don't want something different. Why? Because to have something different means we have to change. So you are here bringing an energy of transformation and change, or inner alchemy. You are here to help people remember their own true, unique source. Whether you do it as a counselor, whether you do it as a channeler, whether you do it as a medium, whether you do it as a dog walker, it really doesn't matter. It comes through you in your own unique way, but it is your voice. So it is essential for you, if this resonates for you, to be comfortable speaking out. And there has been a tendency to really suppress energy moving through you, particularly through your throat. To me. So whatever that means for you, if it resonates, great. If it doesn't resonate, just move on. Okay. What energies are we working with? This is beautiful. Solar plexus. So it's all about empowerment. It's not the kind of power that says, flex my muscles, look at me. That's not the kind of power we're talking about. We're talking about your true essence, which is extraordinarily powerful. Okay? You at your essence are extraordinarily powerful. We all are. Why? Because at our essence, we are part of Source, and Source is freaking powerful. Okay? This is what it says. The frequency of the solar plexus, the yellow flower of life, supports our sense of self, our personal power, and our willpower, as well as our knowing of who we are and what our contribution is to the whole. Okay? We are all unique individuals. We're all uniquely designed. We all have our own unique path to follow in this human body. But we also share a lot with other people. We share feelings, we share emotions, we share the same fears. So even though we are all unique, we also do have something in common. And what I'm feeling here, this is interesting. Oftentimes when we look at other people, we look at what makes them different. We look at their differences. We're not looking at commonalities. And I the way it's coming through, it's done very unconsciously. We're not conscious of it, but that's what happens underneath our consciousness. We look at somebody and we notice the differences. Well, then we'll notice the differences. What if we decided to notice the commonalities? And that would mean looking beyond the surface and recognizing that beyond what person is showing you, there is ultimately a beautiful being just like you, who is all part of Source, who is also uniquely designed, and they appear to you in this human shell, and it's different than your shell, but ultimately their inner essence is the same as you. You're no different. Now, that can be a shot to the ego if the ego tries to appear to be better or feel like it's better. There's nothing wrong with feeling good, by the way. I encourage everyone to feel good. That's the whole point. But if we're trying to, if we are thinking of ourselves as better than other people, then we're missing the point. Because when we think of something as better than other people, or vice versa, we are creating separation. So I don't know why this message is saying, but oftentimes when we look down at other people, we do it with judgment. And I feel like the message is this. What if you notice your own judgments? How do you judge people? I'll be the first one to tell you I come from a very judgmental background. And judging was just a thing. Of course I learned how to do it. It's how I learned to judge myself so harshly. And when we are judgmental, we look down at other people. That doesn't help us all feel unified. Just doesn't help us. That is not to say that we are not unique. Yes, we are. But at the very core, we're all the same. Passion. The frequency of passion reminds us that beneath every intense emotion lies the hidden gem of insight, balance, and calm. It assists us in finding the balance within this intensity, moving us from chaos to the calm of its core, where we can let go, when we can let its long-lasting wisdom fill up. I'm getting the message, do what makes you happy. And automatically my ego resisted. What do you mean, do what makes me happy? That's not going to make other people happy. It may not. So this is not to say that from this point forward, you're just going to do what makes you happy and you don't give a shit about how it affects other people. That's being selfish. Okay, let's face it. Because we all live amongst other people. That is not to say that you should be unhappy. But happiness comes in different forms. What if you could do what makes you happy, but also live in, in an environment where there's other people? It's what you do affects others. Okay. And it's, because oftentimes we move from not doing anything for ourselves and becoming the martyrs to then we swing to the other side and we're saying almost that F off. I'm just going to do what makes me happy, damn it. Because we're trying to overcompensate for where we were before. And that works for a while, but eventually it has to come to the balance. And at the end of the day, to realize that, yes, we all should do what makes us happy. And those are choices. Every choice has a corresponding experience. Okay? So, yes, let's all do what makes us happy, but also realize that what we do impacts other people. I'm not saying don't be happy. That's not what's being said here. It's very nuanced. I'm going to ask it to come through differently. I'm going to give you a silly example. Let's say you're feeling, I don't know, very passionate, and you're going to paint, on the wall of your building because this is what you want. It's going to make you happy. And then the manager of the building says, listen, I love your expression, but you can't do that on the building. Okay? The person is not saying, don't do what makes you happy. The person is saying, do what makes you happy, but this is my building. So at least ask me if I would like that, because maybe what you do does not make me happy. You see what I'm saying? Now, does that mean that you have to go and be upset and you're not going to, allow yourself to express artistically? No. Find another outlet. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a very interesting message there. Also, when we are passionate, our passion spills onto other people, because to be passionate about something means that there is some level of love. To be passionate about something, there is love in there. And when you see someone who's very passionate about something, they're like almost more alive. When we are just kind of flat and we live life from day to day, almost like robots, we actually lose sense of who we are and what we're really here for. And what we are really here for is, ready? As weird as it sounds, we're here to spread love.
Okay.
And doesn't mean you go to every person and start loving them. I actually wouldn't advise that. But from your heart, you can look at people from the perspective of love. And that changes everything. In fact, that's how consciousness looks at everything and everyone. Consciousness doesn't have eyes, but let's just go with this. Consciousness doesn't see us through judgment, because consciousness itself holds no judgment. Because it holds no judgment means we are unconditionally loved. Okay. When we are in a frequency of being that much loved, we can't help but spread that love. They're telling me that's the equation. So what does that mean in simple terms? The best way to spread love, which is higher frequency, is to learn how to love and accept yourself. The more you accept yourself with all your quirks, with all your whatever, even with your programming, doesn't mean you can't change the programming, but the more you accept yourself as you are, knowing that you always have an opportunity to change in some instances. Not all, but you have an opportunity to change. But if you believe that in order to be loved, you have to change, that's the programming. So the best way to spread love is to love yourself. You don't have to like all parts of you, but love you. Why? Because even the parts that you don't like about you serve a tremendous purpose in your life. You may think of it as a negative, but from a higher perspective, there is no judgment. Okay? In other words, everything serves you. And when you look from that perspective, you begin to realize that you're a whole person. You're a whole being. There's nothing lacking within you. You are a whole being. And when you realize that you are a whole being, it doesn't mean you don't have the desires and wants. It doesn't mean that, but it just means fundamentally you are whole. That's the opposite of lack. So we're talking at the very beginning how humanity's consciousness, most of it is rooted in the fear of lack. And when we begin to embody our wholeness, we are shifting from lack consciousness to wholeness consciousness. And that's a completely different ballgame. Again, it doesn't mean that we don't have desires or needs. It doesn't mean any of that. But when we fundamentally realize that there is nothing that is missing from you, you're a spark of the divine, having a human experience with all the quirks, yes, but you are ultimately more than the flesh. And that changes everything. So with that said, I hope this was helpful. Let me know how this resonated with you. Again, if you like to rewrite your soul contract, there is a link down below. I will be going to Peru at the beginning of November. I'm hosting a retreat. Actually, if you want some information, it's down there. So I have my own a journey to look forward, and I have a feeling it's going to be epic. So I might not see you for a week or two. I'll try to do my best, but do let me know how this resonates with you. Let me know in your comments what triggered you, or maybe something made sense. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.